there is a number missing from your P&L. Seriously. It does not appear as a loss. It does not appear as an expense. It does not trigger an audit, a board question, or even a strategy review. It is invisible by design. Not because someone is hiding it, but because the accounting system of almost every major organization was built to track what you spend, not what you fail to earn. That number, the revenue that never materialized, the deal that never closed, the partnership that stalled, and the market that never received you. That is what I'm calling the $30 million bottleneck. A fitting name. And for the global executive expanding into Spanish-speaking markets without the cultural and linguistic infrastructure to operate there at full authority, that number is conservative. Let me show you what is actually on the table, and then let me show you what is quietly keeping you away from it. Latin America's GDP reached $6.76 trillion in 2024, representing 6.1% of global GDP, according to Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean. The region was projected to grow 2.4% in 2025, and then for this year, 2026, it was projected to grow 2.3%. Consistent compounding growth in a market that is digitally connected, increasingly sophisticated, and actively seeking the kind of high-level expertise that executives operating at 8 and 9 figures have built for decades. Built over decades. J.P. Morgan's Private Bank's 2026 Latin America Outlook identifies the region as a strategic rebalancing point for global capital, with renewable energy, fintech, infrastructure, and nearshoring generating opportunity flows that are pulling serious operators toward the region regardless of macroeconomic headwinds. Morgan Stanley's 2026 Latin America Economic Analysis describes this moment as a potential inflection point, a convergence of demographic growth, digital infrastructure maturation, and commodity positioning that creates a narrow window for operators who are prepared to move with precision. The window is real. The question is whether you are equipped to move through it. You need equipping. Here's where it gets specific. A study reviewed by lingohub.com and sourced from Common Sense Advisory Research found that ignoring language and cultural consideration in global market entry costs companies up to 28% of their available global market opportunity. For an executive operating at 10 to 30 million in annual revenue and targeting Spanish-speaking markets, that could realistically double that number. 28% of the 28% of the accessible opportunity is not a rounding error. It is the deal flow that never existed because the room never received you the way it needed to. Research cited by UK's Committee on Economic Development and reviewed in multiple international trade analyses estimated that language barrier-related friction costs UK businesses alone approximately $50 billion per year in taxable revenues. Seriously? All because, really? 3.5% of GDP, 3.5% of GDP. The US figure is proportionally larger. In 2025 analysis from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that 10% increase in language barrier index between trading partners corresponds to a 7 to 10% decrease in trade volume. This is not a soft cultural finding. Actually, I want you to eradicate soft culture, soft skills from your vocabulary entirely. That has no place in a global authority. It's mediocre at best. And I'm feeling generous today. That's why I gave it that. This is a measurable, quantified compression of economic output tied directly to the absence of linguistic and cultural infrastructure. You can't be kidding me. Our brains were meant to learn new things. The $30 million bottleneck is not a metaphor. It is a calculation. And most executives have never run it for their specific situation because no one has built the tool that makes it visible. Here's the framework. I want to name the 4 specific mechanisms through which the bottleneck operates, because it's not one thing, it is 4 things running simultaneously. And the combination is what makes the cost nearly invisible until the executive is deep enough into the market to see what they have been losing. Mechanism 1, the trust deficit. In Spanish-speaking markets alone, in Spanish-speaking business cultures across Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and the border region, trust is the prerequisite for transaction. Trust is the prerequisite for transaction, not the byproduct of it. The relational architecture that precedes a deal in these markets is substantially different from the transactional architecture of North America and the Northern European business context. Completely different world, my friend. An executive who enters these markets without cultural fluency, who does not understand the cadence of relationship building, the signals of genuine respect, the distinction between a warm meeting and a committed relationship, will consistently misread the room. Not because they lack intelligence, because they lack context. The misread looks like this. The meeting goes well. Both parties express interest. Follow-up is warm, and the deal does not close. Weeks pass. The executive follows up again. More warmth. No movement. This is not a delay. This is the market communicating that the trust infrastructure required for the transaction was not built. And the executive who does not speak the language, not just linguistically, but culturally, cannot hear what is being communicated because he does not have, or she does not have, the operating system. The National Bureau of Economic Research's working paper on language barriers in multinationals documents this mechanism at scale. Language and cultural barriers reduce not just communication efficiency, but trust formation rates. The deals that do not close because of this mechanism do not appear as losses. They appear as deals that were never fully materialized. Mechanism 2, the precision loss. Oof, this one hurts a lot. Every high-stakes negotiation, partnership, discussion, or advisory engagement operates in nuance. The precise word matters. The specific framing of a term matters. The way a condition is stated in a letter of intent matters. When an executive operates through translators, they lose precision at every layer. The translator is rendering meaning, not transmitting it. And meaning at a level high stakes executive negotiation is not tolerant of rendering errors. A 2025 analysis by lingohub.com on language barriers and global expansion documented that senior executives who relied on translation intermediaries in high stakes negotiations consistently reported a sense of being one step removed. Well, it wasn't a sense of being as a feeling, it was a sense of being because that is what it was. You were, they were, it was so. Yes, of course they were probably 2 steps removed, but the pride didn't let them to admit it. Able to understand the general direction, but not the specific texture of the conversation. In negotiations where the specific texture is where the deal actually lives, that gap is material. That is not an argument against professional translation. It is an argument for developing the fluency that eliminates the dependency. Mechanism 3, the authority signal. Authority is not declared, it is perceived. And the signals that constitute authority vary significantly across cultural contexts. In North America business culture, authority is signaled primarily through credentials. Nice. Track record, the declarative confidence. In many Spanish-speaking business contexts, particularly at the senior executive level, authority is signaled through relational continuity, cultural fluency, and what may be described as the ability to move at the rhythm of the culture rather than imposing a rhythm on it. The executive who enters Latin America boardroom and commands it in the way that they command a room in New York, Chicago will be received differently than they expect. Initially, than they expect. Not negatively, initially. But over time, the absence of cultural fluency becomes visible. And in markets where long-term relationship is the primary business infrastructure, that absence compounds. McKinsey's research on organizational performance in cross-cultural context documents, this is the primary reason high-competence executives fail to generate the expected return on new market entry. The authority they bring is real, but the signals they send do not carry into the new context. 4th mechanism, the operational tax. Every executive entering a new market without fluency in its language and culture pays an ongoing operational tax that is invisible in the accounting and brutal in the execution. The tax looks like this. Every conversation requires more time because nothing is immediate. Every document requires review or translation. Every relationship requires an intermediary. Every meeting requires a cultural interpreter, formally or informally. Every decision takes longer because the inputs are arriving through a filter. They're not embodied. That time cost compounds. It means the executive is spending bandwidth on friction management that should be going toward market building. It means the team is spending resources on translation and mediation that should be going towards execution. It means that the competitive advantage, if you believe in competition, that made the executive successful in their home market is being eroded by the friction of operating in a new context they were not built for. Deloitte's 2026 Global Human Capital Trends report identified bandwidth depletion as the primary execution bottleneck for leaders navigating complex and new contexts. Their data is direct. Leaders who are operating at high cognitive load due to contextual unfamiliarity make slower, lower quality decisions, even when their baseline decision-making capability is elite. The operational tax is the silent multiplier on all three previous mechanisms. It does not just create problems. It makes it harder to see and solve the problem that already exists. Here's what this actually looks like. The EY 2025 to 2026 Doing Business in Latin America Investment Guide documents one of the most consistent findings in its analysis of foreign executive findings, in its analysis of foreign executive entries into the region. The operators who succeed are the ones who have made a genuine investment in cultural and linguistic infrastructure before they enter the market, not as a response to early failures. The pattern of failure is almost always the same. You ready for the pattern? The executive enters with strong credentials and a compelling offer. The early meetings are promising. Of course they are, because you're you. The feedback is positive, and the market does not convert at the rate or pace that the home market experience would predict. The executive diagnoses a market problem and adjusts the offer, then adjusts the price, then adjusts the team, and the real issue, the trust deficit, the precision loss, the authority signal, the operational tax, never gets addressed because it was never correctly diagnosed. It wasn't even on the radar. The EY analysis found that companies with dedicated cultural and linguistic integration programs demonstrated measurably significantly higher paths to profitable engagement than comparable companies that relied on translation and cultural briefing alone. The difference was not the offer. It was the operator. And it was the operating system that the operating was operating from. Here's the standard. The $30 million bottleneck is a precise description of what happens when a high caliber executive brings everything right to a new market except the infrastructure that allows the new market to receive them at full authority. The four mechanisms I described today, the trust deficit, the precision loss, the authority signal, and the operational tax, are not solved by the same tools that diagnosed them. They require a different order of intervention. One is linguistic, one is cultural, One is identity level, and one is AI backed. Running simultaneously and sustained through the full arc of market entry, through the full arc of the learning curve, through the full arc of the embodiment curve. That is the architecture of the Global Authority Protocol. If the numbers I have described today reflect the scale of your actual exposure, if you can see the gap between the market that is available and the market that is currently inaccessible to you given your current infrastructure, the Global Authority Protocol may or may not be for you. I work with a small number of executives at a time. The conversation starts with a qualifying call where I determine whether your situation is one that we can facilitate. You know how to reach me because it is in the bio and is in the description. This being stated, keep being amazing, keep being great. Do not avoid what seems to be scary. You have to go back through the learning curve. You have to unlearn and relearn. These are the times that we're living in. Do not be the person that waits 7 years to learn how to work an iPhone. Let's make this happen, Captain. I believe in you. Keep it organic. I love y'all.